So good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Singleton, Lunch Poems Coordinator. Thank you all for coming here today. This is our 21st season, and I'd like to invite you all to sign up on our email list, which is by the librarian's desk. We also have posters with this year's complete Lunch Poems program, so be sure to pick one up. Also on our website, lunchpoems.berkeley.edu, you can find a video, audio recording of today's reading and all of our previous readings. We have our very own YouTube channel, so please do check it out. Trying to rack up those numbers. Next month, on November 3rd, please come back and join us for Carmen Jimenez Smith. And also December 1st, the current U.S. Poet Laureate Juan Felipe Herrera will be here to read. So do come back and join us. If you want a little prose in your life in the meantime, our sister program is hosting Karen Joy Fowler this evening at 5 o'clock here in the Morrison Library. So now please welcome incoming Lunch Poems Director and English Professor Jeffrey G. O'Brien, who will introduce today's stellar reader. Thank you.
Stellar Michael Palmer. I'm really proud to have Michael Palmer here reading for us, even though he once wrote a poem called I Do Not Know English. He does definitely know English and has written a permanently necessary poetry in that language. Part of the reason it's necessary is because Palmer knows that he shares that language with all the exercises of power that have happened in it and all the atrocities of those exercises of power. And you can hear that in I Do Not Know English. You can hear doublespeak and contradiction and a desire to separate from while remaining attached to all the justifications that come in language after and also before acts of atrocity, which is to say that Michael Palmer is a political poet. He's a poet of witness. He's a poet of lamentation. But he's also hilariously funny, and that title, I think, condenses all of that energy and all of those commitments. It's both witness and involved in the pleasure of joking, even the joke about contradiction, even the joke about tragic contradiction. But I also hear something else in it beyond those two things. I hear Palmer's indebtedness to a particular forebear of contradiction and the tragic, and I'm thinking of Samuel Beckett here. And I'm thinking particularly of the Samuel Beckett of, I can't go on, I'll go on. And you hear that all the time as music in Palmer's poetry. It has eddies and shards of repetition in it, going on without going on, by saying something without saying something new or further. I can't go on, I'll go on could be heard not only as contradiction, but as saying go on twice in a row. And this is to say that Palmer is a poet of technique, of music, of someone who's not embarrassed to be thinking about poetry as song in an era in which we don't pattern language in poetry as sonically and as emphatically musically as we used to. For Palmer, poetry is an unembarrassable task, even if there's much to be embarrassed about collectively. And I just want you to hear a little bit of Palmer's poetry of continuance, poetry of repetition, poetry written in the wake of atrocity, to hear how it sounds itself forward by listening to what it's already said, how it self-reacts and how it predicates again and again, going on even when it feels like it should not. In The Laughter of the Sphinx, there's a poem called After, right? So it's already after something. But it starts on the word and. It starts in medias res, in middleness. And to write a poem beneath the sickle moon is barbaric, and to trace a poem upon the lover's body is barbaric, and to write a poem amidst the dust storm of history is barbaric. And it goes on in that vein, and this is how it ends. And to begin to say farewell, to begin and to dwell upon, to dwell among. That's Palmer's ethical task and musical imperative, and I invite you to listen to a lot more of it starting now.
Thanks very much, Jeffrey and Giovanni and everyone responsible for the mistake of inviting me. I realize now you pass very quickly in this life from being a young, incomprehensible poet to being an old, incomprehensible poet, but okay. I can adjust this more if there's a problem. Tell me if you can't hear. He mentions Samuel Beckett, and certainly that's an appropriate reference. But I realized with a shock that I'm old enough that when I was first reading Beckett as a teenager, I suppose, he was pretty much an unknown writer, castigated for the horrors he was rendering. The strange contingency, I suppose, of fame and duration. The book, The Laughter of the Sphinx, is divided into two parts. The first section, The Laughter of the Sphinx, and the second section is called Still. I just thought I would begin with the second section, which is relatively brief, and then just read selectively from the first section. This is a little note about this Still. Still was conceived as an open sequence, both for voices and for the page. The order of the poems need not be seen as fixed. I envisioned it with the possibility of musical accompaniment, hence performance. Should a composer ever care to take all or some of it on, I would hope that she or he would feel free to consider a transformative approach to the texts, such as employing repeats and so on as desired. Here too, the possibility of parallel lives. Still, a cantata or nada for Sister Satan. I don't know exactly when Sister Satan started appearing to me as my, I don't know if she's an alter ego or a soror mystica or whatever, but suddenly she was there. And oddly enough, she continues to be present in some works since I finished this book. Opening poem. Zeit ist Geld, as we say in America, and art too. Buckle my shoe to the wall, my heart to my jaw, my throat to the kestrel's cry. Call me Digital Mike, or Mnemonic Mike, or Felonious Mike, or even better, don't ever call. Time is money, says it all. First chorus. And the children who have no language sing, Obatai, Roma, Obatai, Romatai, Oba, Romatai. They sing Li, La, Li in pursuit of light. And the children who have no knowledge of death sing with their darting hands, offer praise in the stubble fields, turn their faces to greet the rain. And the children with their knowledge of death place sound upon sound, stone upon stone, fire upon flame. They pour sand on their heads. They bow toward the west. Obatai, Roma, Obatai. The next one has an epigraph from Inger Christensen, the great Danish poet who died a few years ago. There's no more to say. There's no more to say. There are the minutes, the hours, the pulses of the day. There are the daylilies, cormorants, fretted clouds. There are the sweet smells of baking, apples, tart and mild along the way. There is a chair of solid oak. You sit on it to write. You get up and pace, and it is late. The light is gone. There's a drunk muttering by the curbside about eyes. Why so many eyes? Ancient, babbling child, swollen, tattered, rheumy-eyed, once hazel perhaps, hazel-eyed. Why so many hours, so many eyes? There's no more to say. There's a chair of solid oak, a desk where you sit to write. Scent of night jasmine, memory of a face, a voice, body taut, short of breath, desperate dancer, grasping for air, never, not ever quite enough. Actias luna, luna moth, desperately dancing toward light, not ever quite enough. And the page upon the desk is white. The desk, as it happens, the improvised desk also white. The plum blossoms and the night sky at times almost white. And as to the children, erased this day beneath a placid sky, beneath a phosphorus rain, a rain white as night along the sandy shore where they'd slipped away to play for a time. Can you tell us the time? Venus phosphor, morning star. They will be long forgotten by tomorrow. We will remember to forget them. We will be certain to forget them, since it's necessity that there be no more to say. It was a curious sequence I was working on. This was a couple of years ago, and already, of course, in the news was the horror of the refugee crisis and the dying children in particular. And it was made quite a bit more poignant by the fact that my daughter and grandson were staying with us in a little house in the East Coast. And he was in the process of coming into language in that astonishing fashion that a 3-year-old has of new words every day, a flow of new words every day, and picking them up from you and picking them up from the air and so on, and learning the names of things. So these two things were running through my mind, the tragedy of the drowning children and dying children by fire, by water, what have you, and then this sense of coming into consciousness of a child. The child first learning the words wonders what comes between the words, and learning the words she tries to recall what came before. A ringing or whistling or roaring, a kind of chorus perhaps, as of wind over water, like the water here, near enough to see, that's mysteriously called the sound. Are there sounds between the words where all feels asleep and still? Maybe she laughs at the thought that the words breathe too, and that the breathing turns right there in the air between the words. Second chorus. And the ancient children of stone, the kuroi and the koroi, their bodies are still as they sing of what has passed and what is to come, since they know too much of binary stars and spots on the sun, of the tiger in the night, the tiger burning all too bright, the forest, the anvil and the furnace, and the sovereign secrets of the tongue and of the bone, the sovereign secrets of tongue and bone. To the mother they soundlessly sing, "Are you here or are you gone?" And they see the father, dazed, mute singer as well, brittle and bent, effaced by time's remains, and as elsewhere not to be named. Sing, silent father, my brother, in your distant tongue, lost father, lost other. Sing of the flesh and of the bone, and speak for the children of stone, the kuroi and the korai, and the secrets of their smile. From the broken tower of the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Holy Spectacle, we watch the rockets fall upon the small and ever smaller figures. They rain down in many colors, chrome yellow, magenta, blood red, and a white, whiter than white, before the attentive audience, eager, fervent, and intense, as if in a kind of trance. The latest show is always the greatest until the next. And this next one is for my grandson, for Nico. And the children sing, knowing and unknowing, in the space of the field that is opening, in the child's slow time, the rhymes of the day and the rhymes of night, the rhymes of still water and those of sudden fire, of the lamb, the dolphin, and the unicorn, and the white spider constructing a cloud. Say apple for the first time. Say yellow apple, wagon, plum, seahorse, flying horse, river horse. And taste mint, say mint. Watch the lantern light as it plays across the furred walls of a barn, the curves of a rutted path. Words, so many, made for ears, for eyes, so many eyes. Say I, say cyan, violet, wintergreen, beneath your feet, the simple words as they vanish among the white oaks, enduring shadows, the pawpaws, the sassafras with lobed leaves, the spirals of summer thought. Sing the secrets of the stream. Things get lost, things whose words can no longer be heard. Still, we try to find them and place them inside the silences. This next one has a quotation from Marina Tsvetaeva. The emperor will get his cities, his drummer boy lie in the snow. The children drum on anything, a bottle, a pan, the corpse of a car. They drum Sister Satan into the garden. They drum the dogs of war loose upon the poppy fields. They drum whatever they can find. A skull will do, a smile, a wooden shoe. Most anything will do. These children who are who they are. They drum the forest, the bones, the night, right up the glass mountain. They drum whatever they can find. They drum the silent sky. Third chorus. And the elders as one. I was sealed in the magic box, there to be taken limb by limb apart. Invisible, I danced with Sister Satan. As regards her caress, you may only guess. At last, I wore no mask. The seasons came, the seasons went, seasons of our waking, seasons of our sleep. Where it was cold, now it was hot. Where rivers had flowed, nothing but sand. New world we had wrought. The shadows of mournful ancestors passed along the sun, lighting that magic box, though I knew them not. Invisible we danced, Sister Satan and I, dismembered as we were, all torsos, all legs, all arms, still eager to please one another, while the clowns of our better natures sang untranslatable songs. So now I will go back to the opening section, which consists of mainly relatively short poems. Idiot Song. By permission of the sun, the Arctic chill descends. In a teacup, a storm. In a sentence, the logician's fate. And poetry, an enemy of the state of things. By the roadside, in a ditch, or beneath a buckled bridge. Now it is our wounds that make love in the streets. Wounds hastily dressed with vetiver and mint, while slender poplars bend amidst the violent winds. What is your name, mindless son? What idiot song will mark your end? The next poem, Let Us Ravel the Silence, is a sort of, kind of, in effect, multiple collaboration. A friend of mine, a painter and pastel artist named Irving Petlin, who lives mostly in Paris, had written, had been using W.G. Sebald, The Rings of Saturn, as a text to work off of, to in effect translate into not so much illustrations, but interpretations. And I was asked to do a parallel text to Irving's pastel that was playing off of Sebald. So we've got a funny little, I spoke of parallel lives, this is another one. Let us ravel the silence, its pages turning. It is a hum, after all, of two, I'm sorry, let us ravel the silence, its pages turning. It is a hum, after all, of no sound, a buzz of absent bees, a swirl of sky licked by flame, and a waste of sea, reeds bending east towards a tentative shore, scatter song of light's passage across a curving earth. There is a bridge in the bare distance. It is a bridge between silences, bridge of steel where once the emperor's dragon was meant to pass, bearing the palaces of the gods on its back, brows furled over blazing eyes, scales of gold coating the torso, and always the stones at sea bottom like extinguished stars. The sun here neither rises nor sets. Does chalk emit a breath? This is a poem, it's called For Laszlo K, in reference to Laszlo Krasnohorsky, the great Hungarian novelist and film writer, who was here a few years ago and stayed with me. I was giving a reading at City Lights. And the day he left, I wrote this poem for him. The characters are the victims of the novel. They pay with their lives for our words. They fall between the pages in their silence, and we invent hounds to devour them. We invent worlds to swallow them. We pass sentence upon them. The hangman arrives with his silken rope, its infinite strands forming a circle without beginning or end, round as the wave's gray eye, rolling toward what sudden shore, unpeopled, yet teeming with watchful night fires. The laughter of the Sphinx. The laughter of the Sphinx caused my eyes to bleed. The blood from my eyes flowed onto that ancient map of sand. Ridiculous as I am, often I have been drawn to such lands, rippling oceans of silence and the distant, enigmatic glow of burning shops and burning scrolls, overseen by river birds and mitred beasts, sad-eyed scholars and mournful scribes, omniscient ibises, and in the dust-clogged air, the laughter of the Sphinx, endlessly riddling, endlessly echoing, loosing the blood's engulfing tide. Isle of Dogs. There's an Isle of Dogs in the Thames. On the Isle of Dogs we barked. We had our say from day till dark. A chorus we were of piebald hounds. Our howling spiraled out across the downs. We howled at the redness of light, bayed at the rising waters and approaching night. We lived on an island of sounds. None listened, none heard. The sounds were entirely ours. None listened, none heard, but we didn't care, as long as our howls shaped the still air. We lived on the Isle of Sounds. Untitled, 27/7/2012. A messenger passed over me. It was 11:41 p.m., and I thought, I wish I were as stark and true as Sonny Rollins, those nights on the singing bridge. Wish to gnaw on the singing bones in Charlieville and Rome. Wish for the peace of the blaze, peace of the parricide, of the eternal ferryman, blind to the river's twin sides. A messenger passed over me. It was 11:43. I washed the last dishes, gazed at my altered eyes in the fractured glass, found fellowship with a moth flecked with gold, tore certain pages apart. A messenger passed over me. It was 11:51. I watched the rain seep through the roof, counted the drops, thinking of Li Po. A messenger passed through me. It was 11:58, passed over the waters of the warming world, passed through the eaves, the walls, the pages of this house. And I knew that soon enough I would become a fossil bird or a diorite stone. Trio, Paris, 1959. And at the Blue Note that night, Bud called pork chops and assholes. That was Bud Powell in a very sad late state, and he had there was a cafe, a club called the Blue Note on the Champs-Élysées, and I went to hear him one night, and you never knew whether he would be playing well or would be completely disturbed. But he announced to the crowd that he was going to play pork chops and assholes, which turned out to be polka dots and moonbeams. Somehow that said it all for me. Tomb of Aimé Césaire. I mourned a person who turned out not to be dead. Of that, what is to be said? Surgical noise of the city, sentence and song under earth. I wept for something lost, a dawn or a dusk or a thought, a thing that couldn't be bought. Sun, throat cut, woman removing a glove, and the body at once naked and veiled, waiting and waiting for what? Coma, Berenices above the bay, sea rack beneath, speech of the bone and of the polychrome wing, speech of the leaf descending and of the rubble in a ruined field. Words have their lives apart. I mourned a person who turned out not to have died beneath a feral sky and a flooded shore where a wave was frozen in midair. The next one is called Sounds for Time's Bones, Among the Dancers. It was, some of you may know that I've worked for over 40 years with a dance company, Margaret Jenkins Dance Company in San Francisco. And this was a piece written for the 40th anniversary season a couple of years ago. An evening length work called Time's Bones. Such as we are entering, such as we are in place, moving in place, such as we are departing, as we were, as we are, as a leaking roof floods the stage, we become swimmers, waders. As the power fails, we sing, dancing in the dark. In the dark, a rabbit leaps out of a hat, a top hat. Clowns emerge from a tiny car, countless clowns, numerous as stars, in the cartoon sky, the invisible night sky. In the dark, the past crosses the stage, sipping from an emerald cup, and the night sun dances, and the day moon dances. Star throwers dance in the ancient stone. Stones in the stream roll drunkenly. Beheaded Orpheus, Orpheus unsexed, sings in the stream. Osiris in the Atef crown gathers up his limbs. Mosquitoes dance. The man with two bodies, the bearded lady, the king of Pentacles, and the queen of wands, of pentacles, and the queen of wands. The joker dances. The hanged man, the knight and the page. The book of hours dances in solitude, so, and the green of serpentine, the cliff swallow, the adamant child, the echoing crowds amid the burning buildings in the streets and public squares. And at a certain moment, so, the ice queen begins to dance, frozen in place, each stare, each gesture precise, never a smile. She is the queen of ice, there where past and present become perfectly aligned, as if beyond time. And she sings, to begin is to begin to end. And so time dances, the body of time, the bones sculpted by time wobble and dance, and time's eyes watch as the seas rise, laugh as the seas rise, and the speakers are silent, though the words speak themselves, and the net of nerves trembles, dances as it did and as it will, and the syllables dance in the devil's dictionary, the naked letters dance. They cannot know what tale they tell in the dark, entering such as they are, departing, moving through a place that is moving, the players, the few and the many, feeling their way. Poem called Storm. It was written for Bob Haas. Basho by my bedside these many years, little wonder the roof is leaking. This is in memory of Yvonne Cherupnin, who was a composer of my generation who I became very friendly with in college. He was a third-generation composer, actually. His grandfather had been a composer in Russia for the great ballet companies, neo-romantic composer. His father, I guess, was... Well, maybe the grandfather was a romantic composer and his father was a neo-romantic composer. Yvonne was none of those things. He was a wild, in those days, electronic improviser. He died quite young. This poem was spurred by the fact that there was an article, I think in the arts section of the New York Times, about Yvonne's son, who is a composer. who uses his body as an instrument in various ways. And suddenly these memories of Yvonne, of walking with him through the streets of Paris as a teenager, and his family had a wonderful atelier there that had belonged at one point to Delacroix, I believe. So Yvonne asked me to come and join him there. And we went out for a walk through the Paris streets, and he suddenly pulled out a joint and started smoking. And I said, "You can do that here? You're not going to get busted or anything?" In memory of Yvonne Cherepnin. So many sounds flower, but they are not flowers. They are mangled girders in a field of flowers, echoes of hooves, heavy metal of tanks, music's lost memory. In the enveloping mist, our shoes squealing upon the paving stones while winding through your Paris streets, which one of us said, "The absolute secret of art lies in the tongue of a shoe"? Who said, "The true secret of art resides in the gaze of a cat"? And that's that. Which one of us asked, "Is this the buried sound of the future past? Do electrons still sing when no one is listening?" A little stoned, perhaps. We spoke of corpses waving batons, hierophants professing poems, as the mist cloaked our words, and midsummer night, measure by measure, finally arrived. Ivan Alexandrovich, is it only the fugitive things that ravel the cells and ring through the air, le va et le vient, as you put it, the slow rise of a half step followed by falling semitones in a day of one birth and one death? So many sounds flower, but they are not flowers. They are street calls and cries and the promises of bone and the bright, sightless eye at the flower's brief heart. This is called a Dream of Sound Inside the Mountain, after Anish Kapoor. Anish Kapoor is a sculptor, quite a very famous sculptor, does a lot of public art and so on. And I was asked, along with a number of other people, to write a response to a poem of his, a wooden statue of his called The Mountain from 20 years ago or so. And that was being exhibited in a museum in Holland, I think it was. A dream of sound inside the mountain. It is too brief, this life inside the mountain, where headless horsemen sing fevered songs of self and war. When did we first notice the trees of mottled bone? When first hear the cawing of crows, contention of the orchard orioles? The sleepers' echoing cries, rehearsing their final words, resisting final dreams. These dreams were mine, and not mine, say the walls of stone, walls of the poem. Hedge crickets sing, and the white whale, its whiteness sings in the stone dream, and the lost hours have each their silent song in the heat of bee time and the shock of desire. Those times when time is not, and the endlessly shifting stones carelessly speak, and rain floods the rutted roads. It is too long, this spiral life. It is too brief, how the wind and light pass through our bodies of glass. Song. Festival night. We climb the candle one last time. The wind from the west knows us best. We climb the candle one last time. Blood-streaked horses flare across the dream. They know us best, who know us least. The waters rise as high as the flame. They are a test, and this text I live in is a difficult one, she mentioned in the dark, as we spoke of syllables and suns and sightless horses on the run. Festival night, we climb a final time, and if it is a song, it is a song not to be sung. Just a couple more. At the tomb of Artaud, wherever it may be, we hear a howl unmistakable, the howl of a wounded wolf gnawing at its foreleg caught in the teeth of a hunter's steel trap. At the tomb of Artaud, wherever it may be, a sleeper and his double throw dice made of bone. Should the dice fall just so, they explain, it will snow on the tomb of Artaud. Should they fall otherwise, the earth will be dry. A dancer and her double make love on the bright stones, the light bringers by the tomb of Artaud, that has become a book of stone they care not to read, whatever it may mean, as the fitful, iridescent dragonflies alight on the wet heat of their bodies. Only later will they piss on his grave as a clock without hands applauds in the dark. To the Polish poets, March 2014. This watch, carved, it would appear, from a solid titanium block, sits comfortably on the wrist, even magisterially, a corrupt, despicable word, magisterially nonetheless, and impervious to the elements as advertised. It is what the children of the present age call scornfully a dedicated device, serving no purpose other than the seconds, the minutes, the hours rendered in analog, no indicators for a coming storm or a great wave approaching the ever-crumbling coast, or for the earth as it shifts suddenly beneath us, no indicators for the first veiled light of dawn and the seabirds accompanying swarms. Impassive of face, free of memory, free of time, this block. Falling down in America. This came about because I started receiving endless phone calls on my landline. Advertising various devices that you could press when you fell down and couldn't get up. I was very grateful for this message of what was to come. Falling down in America. Every 3 seconds, someone over 65 falls down in America. Our records show that you are over 65 and may therefore have already fallen down in America, maybe more than once. Perhaps upon entering your bath, you slipped and cracked open your skull and subsequently drowned in a pool of blood. If so, disregard this notice. Perhaps while gazing at the sea distractedly one day, your balance failed and the waves carried you away toward the irradiated swells of Fukushima. If so, never mind. The flesh has already peeled from your limbs, and your eyes have melted in their sockets, in which case you should disregard this notice. We need hardly remind you that many of your friends and relatives, perhaps beloved uncles, aunts, cousins, your 7 brothers and sisters, parents assuredly, may have succumbed in some manner to the fateful equation of gravity and age. In addition, it is likely that your investments recently caved, and as a result, from the shock, you fainted upon the cheap Mexican tiles of your dining room floor, and days later awoke among impersonal professionals masked and clad in white, and addressing you as if you were a child. If so, you now know that you are utterly alone in this life. Please favor us with a reply regarding our one-time offer, which will soon expire. Maybe I'll expire with that. Thank you.